whoever you are, of whatever nation, not to wake up and think, right, we should never be so ill-prepared again. Supply of food, supply of health, these are basic needs which should never be compromised, regardless of age, color, creed, religion, or anything.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it. And welcome back to Inspired Leadership. My name is Tyler Bailey. I'm here with Susan Power. And before I get started again, I just want to say thank you so much for making this podcast awesome, sharing your ideas, being our guest on our show, and giving us the motivation to keep this going, especially in a time like this where everyone is living through screens, and this podcast is being starting to shine a real light on positivity and sharing good news with everybody, showing them a path and showing them what others are doing to try and manage this situation. With that said, I want to introduce our next guest, which is Jeremy Moore. We've had him on the podcast way back when the podcast began, and his perspective on leadership as well as just his personality, I think, is at the right time. A little bit about him. He's a managing director for ZoomCow Limited. What they do is they measure the impact leaders have on their teams, and he teaches leadership in the field of impact coaching. Let's hop into it. All right, I wanted to ask you when we last had the podcast and talked. You were in the workplace of Riddlebox, and now you've moved on from there. So what are you doing now? And since we last spoke.
Well, actually, I've kind of gone back to where I was, because before Riddlebox, I was ZoomCow. It was formed in 2010. But then I was a co-founder of Riddlebox until October last year. But we kind of went our separate ways because my colleague was really keen on going really into academia and proper hardcore consulting, which I've not really the church I wanted to belong to. And I just thought I wanted to go back to what I really love doing. The two things I love doing are one-to-one delivery on coaching. I call it impact coaching. I've got a very, very clear set program of stuff I like to cover. So I'm not looking for just nice conversations. I believe in delivering kind of some taught modules and then building that into the leaders' environments. That's number one. And number two, I like to measure, rather than experience, actually the impact we have on the teams that work for us as leaders. Now, you'll say, what's the difference between impact and experience? The truth is not a huge amount, except experience is kind of a little bit more theoretical, impact's a bit more practical.
Mm-hmm. So Jez, in terms of leaders coaching their teams right now, with all of us, pretty much all of us anyways, working from home, do you have any suggestions of how they can coach and engage their teams and build relationships in this virtual environment where there's not so much social interaction day to day?
I do, actually. I was discussing this the other day. When we all suddenly, before the lockdown, we were all hustle and bustle together. We're all doing teamy type stuff, and I don't know how many of the teams that tune into this sort of had a clear purpose and a clear way of working, and we've kind of gone home to a completely different environment, and we're kind of trying to pick up where we left off. We're trying to sort of dance a dance to the wrong music kind of thing. And I think the first thing you can do is kind of just rip up the rule book and just talk to your team. So look, come on, we got a completely new way of communicating now. How are we going to visualize this? How are we going to think about this? Because one of the things that this has thrown up, which I think is an incredibly exciting opportunity, is corporate agility right now has never been greater. If you and I wanted to tune into somebody in Venezuela or Germany or Australia, and we wanted to fix something together, we could do it in half an hour, and we get all our collective brains round to that spot immediately to address their issues. Because a leader's biggest asset is his brain, is his thinking, and his team is their cognitive ability. And now, so rather than think of communicating like some kind of heroic figure, I'm thinking of kind of like a ant's nest or a beehive, where the bees, I saw the inspiration for this came from something I saw on Discovery Channel, where this bee was covered in too much wax, it had fallen into something, and all the other bees came all over it to rescue it. And it was a fantastically great, little clip. Yeah. And I thought, we've got to think like that now, that we are almost telepathically through the internet connected. And we should think of swarming to points of opportunity and points of challenge, which we can do without getting onto a plane, without having to get onto a car, literally going into our study, making a few little connections, and bang, we're there. And that's never been truer than now.
Yeah.
It's, we've just stuck into old trance of having to deal, get on planes, trains, and automobiles. And now that's ripped away from us. You've got to make this work.
That's a good point, because as entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs move a lot more quickly than large corporations. But now this corporate agility and collaboration is ripe for moving quickly, regardless of the size of the company you work with. Or
the globe.
Yeah.
We could be having this conversation anywhere in the globe right now in minutes. And we've got to, and by the way, I'm a great believer in you teach what you most need to learn. I was the worst offender of this, but necessity is the mother of invention. And I've really, in the last 2 weeks, kind of really got the hang of this, and I'm really enjoying it. I've been speaking to Israel, Turkey, Germany, France, now Canada, sometimes in the same day.
Yeah.
And getting like swarming. I like this word, I like in this in mind, that we swarm to where we need to go immediately. And we bring our cognitive ability, our skills, etc., to any challenge that any corporation changes. And it's never been quicker and faster and more embraced and more compulsory than it is now. Now, if that's not exciting, I don't know what is.
Yeah, you had to deal with a big change recently. I mean, you were training for the London Marathon, and now it might be a year, maybe 3 years. Who knows what's gonna?
Oh my God, I hope not.
This thing is gonna go right.
Yeah.
What kind of? How are you being agile with that? How are you? Are you keeping up the training going right now? Are you still going? Are you still keeping it up? Are you saying, well, I'll do it next year? Or
no. I'm running. I ran this morning. I ran Saturday. I run 5 days a week. Fortunately, I've got my daughter who's just turned 30 today. Oh. It is today. And so I want to be 60 and her 30. And so we've been training together. So I've got a training buddy to work with, even though we haven't been able to for the last couple of weeks. But no, because I wasn't really doing it as a gesture. I mean, partly a gesture, I guess. I'm a great believer in choice theory. And I've always kept reasonably fit, but I've never done a marathon. And I just thought, I suppose it's my vanity really kicking in, and my wanting to still look good as I get older, decrepit. It's my shallow ego.
For our listener, what do you mean by choice theory exactly?
The brain, whilst it's very powerful, is incredibly lazy. We kind of do a lot of things by habit. And let me give you an example. I sometimes do this at a leadership conference. I get all the leaders to write down the 10 or 20, usually 10 best things they can think of. What would be the ideal company to work for? And they write down the same things: good work-life balance, respect, good communication, good teamwork, clear purpose as well communicated, all the same stuff. I'll say to them, but if I came and audited your company, would these things be true? I mean, how many of you in this room have a good work-life balance? How many of your teams you can say there's no passive aggression or bullying? How many of you can honestly say, if we turned your company into a reality show like the Kardashians or something, that you would go home proud of what was broadcast? You see, it's not enough to have a good idea. It's not enough to think this is a good thing to do. Unless you choose to do it, it's just waffle. There's nobody got over an addiction, walked out of a dysfunctional relationship, or found a better job, or climbed Everest without first of all, or running the London Marathon, having never done one before at 60, without making a choice.
Right. They might know it's the right thing to do, but they don't take the action and do it, right?
Exactly. Winners choose to be winners.
Nice.
So in terms of in terms of mental well-being right now, this seems to be a big hot topic with isolation and, all the stress that's going on with the uncertainty of COVID-19. Do you have any suggestions? I don't know if you coach your clients on, but how can we nail mental well-being right now?
Measure it. I challenge you to go and today ring up any HR director either of you know try and get 2 or 3 and say to them, by the way, this well-being thing, do you take it seriously? And they go, oh, yes, of course we do.
Mhm.
Okay, what's your score? Do you measure it?
Mm.
They go, well, and 9 out of 10 don't measure it. What they'll say they do, oh, we've got Feng Shui, we've got bowls of fruit, we've got listening groups, we've got this, that, and the other.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, they're all tactical things.
Mhm.
You know, we had all lots of tactical things, but do you actually take it strategically seriously?
Right.
But
Yeah.
if you take it strategically seriously, I want to know, is it going up or is it going down?
Mhm.
Are your bowls of fruit in your listening groups, are they working? Are they having a successful impact?
Mhm.
And so I guarantee you, most HR directors and companies don't actually measure it. They just do tokenism. They just do stuff. And if I'm wrong, you can have your money back.
Mm. But I wonder if they don't measure it. I think you're right. I mean, HR is my shtick, but I don't know sometimes if they don't measure it because they don't know what to pick to measure it. It's not necessarily that they don't think it's important or they don't care about it, but they just, it's not like, profit and loss statement where it's very clear how you measure that.
Yes, and that's a very good point. And that's why we have a platform that measures it. Well, actually, our platform measures it. Well, what we measure is trust and empathy. They're the first 2 most important things of leadership.
Mhm.
And then thirdly, respect.
Mhm.
Now, those 3 things then lead to loyalty, to engagement, and well-being, which is a function of the other 5.
So you got to get the
So-
other 5 in place first.
So,
Yeah.
so the key thing is not to swamp people with a million questions on well-being, because that just isn't going to work. But it's to try and pick the nuances of leadership and the impact that has on well-being as a small cocktail and stay focused on that and measure it, I would argue, quarterly or every 4 months. And then, now you have a strategic measure, then you know if it's going up or if it's going down because of your tactical stuff. So my answer is measure it. When people say, oh, yes, we do. Do you? Is it going up or is it going down then? I've yet, honestly.
Oh, I believe you. Yeah, no.
It's shocking. It's absolutely shocking.
Yeah. So if trust and empathy are lower on the scale, what are some things that leaders can do to better communicate and demonstrate, that empathy in the workplace? What are some practices that you would suggest?
Yeah. This is a great one. I love this one. Is don't try. Now you're going to think it's a really weird thing to say. You're going to think that's a really weird thing to say.
Yeah.
But I'd say to either of you,
there's a leak. Should I try to fix it? Don't try. Just let it leak.
No, but if you two, imagine you two had teams of 12, 15 or 16 and you said, look, Jez, I really got to build this trust and empathy thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say, look, don't do that. Let's examine what are you doing that could erode trust and empathy. Let's try and fix the leak rather than build a bigger boat.
What if the leader says, I don't know?
Listen to feedback. Find out what's going on. Because one of my big bugbears at the moment is that leadership in the last 20 years across Europe hasn't really produced any increase in productivity. And so I would argue, we've got more MBAs, more gurus, more executive programs, more supply of stuff. And we're caught in the trap. The pre-1936 economists believed in a thing called Say's law. And that meant if you supply a product, you create a demand for it. And it was John Maynard Keynes who came along and said, no, you've got to look at the demand side of the economy. And I would say leadership is facing the same challenge. We keep supplying more and more trained and educated leaders, but we're looking down the wrong end of the telescope. We should be looking down the demand side of the telescope, those who are demanding our leadership, and we should be listening to them. They will tell you why you weren't. And if I said, well, I asked you the time of day and you just ignored me, your office door is always closed, you walk around with a headlight thunder, well, I'm thinking about stuff. Yeah, but it doesn't make me feel warm. It doesn't make me feel like you want me around. We are obsessed with supplying better leaders. Our leaders are plenty good enough. They're just trying to lead with one hand tied behind their back, and they're not listening to their audience.
Yeah.
And that's and that in itself would help well-being. The two are inextricably linked.
Yeah, when I think of empathy, I think of first you listen to what the employee is saying and you listen, you watch their body language. They might not tell you. So you got to listen very much at their facial expressions, their body language. And then you try to articulate, what you're seeing so they feel like they're being seen and heard and that you understand them. Is that along the lines of what you think of when you think of empathy?
Um, Loosely, yes. But the trouble is, most people think that listening is keeping my mouth closed. Well, in my head, I'm rehearsing the answer I'm going to give you when you stop talking.
Yeah.
Most people think that listening is keep your mouth closed. Actually, unless you're quiet on the inside, how can you listen on the outside? So actually, there's quite a lot of skills we need to learn to listen properly. I would include perspective analysis. I would include understanding body language. I would include a greater appreciation of self and others' emotions. It is a big subject. It's not sort of, well, I did a half hour on empathy, I've got it cracked.
If only it were that easy.
No, but these are seriously, these are really, I think the questions you're asking are absolutely, I think they've always been pertinent. I think under the existing environment, they're even more pertinent, because I tell you what, I heard stories of people now, we're all forced to work from home, a boss seeing that his team are online, sends them a message, they're not getting a message instantly back, so assuming they're Skyping. This work from home thing can erode trust very easily.
Yeah. You almost, it's like that Ernest Hemingway quote, the best way to find out if you can trust someone is to trust someone, right? And see, you got to assume trust until someone shows you differently.
Yeah.
And you know what, you gotta, and if you take my beehive analogy, if we all get used to working like this and we get used to being agile and communicating frequently but lighter touch, this kind of way, we'll soon figure out the bees that have got it and those who are rogue. It kind of works itself out if you trust the system to sort itself out.
For sure. And in terms of employee experience and measuring how teams are feeling and what they're thinking, how frequently should an employer measure employee experience?
Once a week, once a month, once a year?
I think you can overmeasure.
Biannual?
If you measure too frequently, people feel it's contrived, they feel it's a box tick thing. I think, you should I think you should do it every single day, every single moment. I think you should formally do it using sort of our platform or somebody else's platform about maximum 4 times a year. 2 or 3 probably is my perfect number. Because I think it's a bit like us having an informal friendship, and it's great. We should tune into this every day. But if I felt kind of I'd upset one of you actually a little bit, and I've been a bit insensitive about something, once every now and then we should go for a beer and say, look, I'm really sorry. I've been really useless this week. I've been preoccupied with something else. And the same is with business. Business is the same as any relationship. It's like renewing your vows in your wedding, or having date night, or anniversaries, or Easter. We still want to have chocolate and presents, but every now and then we should actually formally do it.
Yeah, Jazz, I'm really sorry about not sending you a Christmas card. I'm sorry about not sending you a birthday card. We should have a beer over Zoom.
That's a good idea. I'll forgive you everything. Let's arrange a Zoom beer at the end of the week, and I'll forgive you everything. But so trying to encapsulate all the questions you've asked, I would say, first of all, take a strategic approach, not a tactical one. Have a platform which is simple, easy, and gives you a formal bridge to connect. Then you've got to really work on, that's where you may need some coaching. Not everybody needs coaching, of course not. But as long as you start to tune in to listening to the tea leaves in the team, rather than listening to professors who helped you with their MBA, that would be my next key point. And then I would be, and then you might need a bit of help on some listening skills and some stuff like that, or whatever the coaching that might require.
Well, what kind of new projects or focus areas is Zoom Cow like? What are they working on right now, or what are you looking to move into? Are there new clients, a new market, or are you looking to expand the market that you're in, or what kind of new
And
projects are you?
what is Zoom Cow?
Yeah.
Zoom Cow was, was born out of my childhood when I was young, and I'm
sorry. For our listeners, we're on a video call right now. Jez just shot his finger up into the air. It's like the number one thing, Zoom Cow.
I was meant for American and Canadian telly. I can tell. When I was 8 or 9, and I had real problems daydreaming. I used to daydream all the time. I don't know if you at school used to have an exercise book.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know why I did it. It was a time when Batman and Superman and the Hulk were heroes, and we read comics in those days, way before your time.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, pow, what, when So I don't know, Zoom, and then I don't know. I used to doodle Zoom Cow on my exercise book. For some reason, I forgot all about it. And then in 2010, November, in fact, I thought, right, I want to form a coaching company. I want to, and the name came to mind. And so it was originally just a coaching company. But I've got 2 excellent team members, Nick and Rena, who are really bringing we're just getting into our Instagram and LinkedIn, and we're really building on this whole impact narrative and a platform, which ideally we want companies to replace all the stuff they currently do and just use our impact platform. Again, measuring those, because most companies measure engagement. Well, we cover that. Most companies want to measure well-being, but they don't. Well, we cover that. They should measure trust, empathy, and respect for their leaders. Well, we've got that one covered. So it's kind of like a consolidation of the stuff you should be doing, and it's very easy to do. It is a survey. I can't pretend it's what it isn't, but I think it hits the right buttons for the market right now, particularly in this new environment. So that's what we really want to build on, is build a platform out, and that would require HR directors, any leader who takes his team seriously, to get in touch and say, look, okay, let me have a go. How's it work? And then, well, the website, and get in touch.
Yeah, it sounds like it's more important now than ever with COVID-19 to use index like this to measure employee experience. But I'm curious, Jez, once the dust settles and we get some type of new normal, do you think a big part of the workforce will continue to work from home? How will organizations create a culture if we're not all in the same space 8 hours a day working together?
Let me answer, because that's kind of 2 questions in one.
Yeah,
isn't
sorry,
it?
it's kind of a double question.
Yeah. So I don't think we're going to go back to where we were. I think this has actually freed up a lot of agility, and which is just fantastic. I'm enjoying it. And once we've embraced it a little bit more, I do think there's a piece of this we ought to be keeping. I don't think we should ever replace face-to-face communicate. Humans are naturally social animals. Technology does have its limits, but also humans have built-in efficiencies, like getting planes and stuff like that. So there is a middle ground. What I find personally, by communicating this way, it's great at intense data transfer. It's not great at building relationships. But if you have very specific problems and you use it like a surgeon uses the right tools, again, using my former analogy, we can swarm to opportunity and issues that need addressing. However, when it comes to building, I'm not a great fan of the virtual culture. I don't think that really exists. I still think human is a human. I think we are in some ways herd animals. We like our tribe. It would be denying our humanness to pretend that doesn't exist. What I think we should do, though, and I hope this will facilitate that, is when we do get together, we have better quality time together. And that's the key thing. Because this form of communication has cut out a lot of noise. We're not talking about, would you like your sugar in your coffee? Can I get you a biscuit? Oh, this magazine here. what we're doing here is more intense. And as that becomes the norm, hopefully when we actually get together in teams, etc., face to face, we can genuinely enjoy a bit more light-hearted, a bit more proper relationship building without the clutter.
Yeah, break bread together is kind of different to sit
exactly
down, right?
you're saying it much better than I can say it.
It's more
But
relaxed. It's easier to build relationships is what you're saying, I think.
Because we can do the detailed intense stuff, but now let's actually, as you just said, let's break bread, let's properly talk about, now I've got you in the same room, let's really talk about, maybe we should talk about when you've done our well-being and platform stuff, you make sure all the feedback is done face to face. That's the time to take that great formal opportunity to really spend proper quality listening, proper leadership time without the intensity.
And maybe that's the evolution. Like, I think you're right. It's never going to go back to the way it was. Maybe when we do get together in person going forward, it will be 100% relationship focused.
Well, we'll take humans as an anthropological. I didn't say that, wasn't quite right.
Anthropological.
I think you're close. I'm not quite sure.
I don't know.
I'm not even going to try.
No, try it. Susan, what do you think?
Go on.
I don't know.
Right. But you know, humans, even in times of slavery, even in times of revolution, even in times of incredible, I'm thinking of the revolutions in 1848, the Russian Revolution, of wars, all the rest of it. We had this burning need to break bread together, to have ceremonies face to face, however clumsy they may look. I remember, you know, going back to the days of slavery, they used to jump the broom, didn't they? There's always some symbolic thing, and I think if we ignore our need to get back to get the tribe together for some symbolization, then we are denying ourselves as humans. And I think we can now do it better now that we've got a slightly clearer distinction between the worky, intense stuff and actually tribe building stuff. Well, I hope that's the case. Because I like a good party. And it's not quite the same over the screen.
Yeah, it isn't. And hopefully one day, Jez, we get to meet each other in person. This has been fantastic, as again. And I just constantly want you to be a continual guest on this cast, because we always have such a great time. You always have just a warming perspective that especially right now, people need to hear right now.
Yes.
I want to thank you so much for coming on the cast.
Oh, I really appreciate it. You have me anytime you like. I really enjoy speaking to you too, and I love what you're doing.
Thank you to our listeners for your support. Tyler, Bailey, and myself, Susan Power, we've been producing this podcast, sponsoring this podcast for 2 years now. And I can't believe that it's already been 2 years. If you know a guest that you think we should talk to on the theme of inspired leadership, send me an email, susan@powerhr.ca. Till next time, stay inspired.